Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever-so-slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, March 1st, 2026, and this is show number 1086. You may remember last June when I published a PSA entitled, PSA SOS button for Apple Watch fall detection is a slider. I posted that after I had a hard fall while walking Kepler, which caused me to break my nose. It was not his fault. He was unjustly accused. After years of looking at the SOS button, when the Apple Watch detected my fall, I pushed that button over and over and over again, and it never called emergency services. It was only later that I discovered that the button is actually a slider. Great news! I had the opportunity to test that slider just this week. On Thursday, February 26th in the morning, I was walking Kepler on my left side. There was a guy with his little Boston Terrier on the grass to my right. Unfortunately, he had his dog on one of those retractable leashes, and the pup decided he wanted nothing more in this world than to meet Kepler. He dashed right in front of me with his leash at my ankles, basically clotheslining me. As I fell, this time I remembered to roll onto my side so I didn't hit my face again. I succeeded at that maneuver, but unfortunately, falling on my side broke my left femur. As it's more colloquially known, I broke my hip. You're hearing me talk right now from the hospital. As soon as I rolled onto my back, I knew it was broken. If you've ever broken a bone, you know why I knew. It's what I call wrong pain. It's very different from any kind of tissue pain. The Apple Watch detected my fall, so I dragged the slider to contact emergency services. At the same time, I had the dog owner call Steve. Poor Steve is really afraid every time I leave the house on a walk, and with good reason. To be fair, this time was not my fault. In the Apple Watch app on iPhone, at the top level, there's an option to set up Emergency SOS. Among other settings, you can set emergency contacts to be notified. I set up Steve and our two kids, Lindsay and Kyle. Lindsay gave me a description of what happened on her end. She was in a meeting and got a notification on her watch, which she ignored because she was working. Then she got another one, and then another one. Finally, she looked down at her watch and saw a series of notifications all about my fall, up to and including that emergency services had arrived to scrape me up off the sidewalk. That's pretty much the end of the tech part of this story, unless you want to see x-rays of what happened. The femur bone is the long bone that goes from your knee up to your hip, with a ball on top that rotates around in the socket of your pelvis. I guess the whole bone rotates around, but you know what I mean. The x-rays showed that there was a clean break diagonally across the bone. It's below the ball and goes from the lesser to greater trochanter. To fix this, the surgeon drilled a vertical hole down into the shaft of the femur to put in a rod, and then put a screw across the break through the rod to pull the two pieces together. Another screw goes sideways into the rod through my bone to stabilize the rod from rotating. The surgeon told me that it was a good break and that the bones did not shift, so he was able to just bolt me back together to hold things in place until the bones healed back together. Now here's some fun color for the story. After I'd been given the blessed morphine and a nerve block for the excruciating pain that is a femur break, Steve ran home to feed Kepler and pick up our cat Grace from the vet. When he tried to come back before my surgery, he could not get into the hospital. Get this, while we were in the emergency room waiting for me to be admitted, we heard a guy hollering, sounded quite out of control. Evidently, a guy suspected of murder was being treated, and he escaped from the hospital, and then he barricaded himself in a house near the hospital. The whole place was in lockdown with helicopters circling and SWAT teams to find this guy. They did find the guy and get him back into custody, but I did not have Steve holding my hand as I went in because he couldn't get back into the hospital. Now, let's talk about why you care. As I said, I'm in the hospital. Recovery from this is going to be a very long haul. I won't be allowed to put weight on my left leg for 4 weeks, and it'll be around 6 months before I'm walking normally. I've already started physical therapy, which is pretty hard, as you've heard, I'm sure. I can walk with a walker, where walking is defined as holding just my toe to the ground on the left while supporting my weight on my right leg, alternating with using my arms to support me on the walker. Besides being painful to move that left leg, even with narcotics, it's actually brain work to teach yourself not to walk normally. I keep forgetting to point my left toe, and it actually hurts more to slide my left leg forward if I forget to point my left toe. As soon as I point, it's way easier. I think physical therapy might be all about practice to not walk incorrectly, while also gaining the strength to carry myself with my arms. Sadly, with all the working out I do, it's been all leg work, no upper body strength training for a very long time. Now, let's talk about you. One of my first thoughts, believe it or not, was how on earth am I going to get the podcast out? Among the first people I notified were the emergency response team of Jill from the Northwoods, Alistair Jenks, and Bart Bouchatz. Jill said since she most recently produced the show, she could be standing by. Alistair offered content, and Bart was ready to record a solo security bits since this was the weekend we should have been recording together. I don't know what's going to happen in the coming weeks, as I'll be shuffled off to a rehab center possibly as early as Sunday, and I'm recording this on Saturday hoping to publish it on Sunday. If you're hearing this on Sunday, that means it worked. I've been assured by members of the Slack community that they will be starting to do recordings to help keep the show alive so that even with this catastrophic failure of your host, we won't lose our 20-year streak of never missing an episode of the NosillaCast. I'll end this installment of what I suspect will be an ongoing saga with a comedy bit by Brian Regan. In the show notes, you'll see a video that tells the story of how he has such severe intestinal issues that he drives himself to the emergency room. The whole bit is absolutely hilarious, but in the show notes, I've queued up the video to when the nurse asks him to rate his pain. In this part, he talks about how a broken femur bone is the most painful thing you can have. We've got an interesting interview coming up from CES for you, but before I play it, I want to correctly pronounce the name of the product because the gentleman doing the interview is so used to saying it that he contracts the name. The product is called Rescue Retriever, but you'll hear him continuously call it Rescue-triever. I told him afterwards, I said, you got to work on that because you got to pronounce the name of your product clearly. Anyway, let's go ahead and hear the interview. Our good friend and firefighter Bodie Grimm told us that we had to come talk to the folks here at Rescue Retriever, and I'm here with Ryan Tussing, who's going to talk about what happens to dogs in fires, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm a 21-year captain on the fire department. Three things I ask people is, how do firefighters know you have a pet, how many you have, and where to find them in the house when you ever have a fire, right? We don't know. We have to get lucky, right? You could say it's in you could be in the front yard of your house and say, my dog's in there. We say, where? In the back bedroom.
Wish you the best of luck.
Yeah. So we have to search. So I'm the co-founder with my twin brother and the inventor of Rescue Retriever. It's a paw-shaped smoke detector, and you mount it where you know your pet hides. Huh. And if you don't know where they hide, guess what they're scared of? They're scared of the smoke detectors when those go off. So it hurts their ears like a tornado siren.
So doesn't this hurt their ears and then they're going to run away from their hidey hole?
That's how I developed it with my brother. I said, make it silent. So all it does is strobe. The strobe light, it gets mounted low. This is for true fires, to direct firefighters, neighbors, anybody to the room you know that pet's going to be in. Get us to the room that your pet's going to be in for faster rescue. Because as of right now, 40,000 pets die every year in house fires.
Yikes. Yikes.
Yeah.
So you clip this on their crate, for example, but you do it down low because there's less smoke, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Down low because that's where we can see. All the smoke, the high heat smoke will stay up in the air, and we're low when we come in because it's cooler, for one, and two, that's where pets, children are. We teach children, get low, stay low. That's where the survivable air is.
Okay,
so
great.
That's where Rescue Retriever goes, and we'll be able to see it when we come through that front door. So if you have a long hallway, say 4 bedrooms, we have to go door to door to door to door to search and rescue. That's our first tactical objective. Now, Rescue Retriever, that gets us to the door you need us at because you know where your pet hides. We don't.
Right. So does Rescue Retriever work off the sound of the other smoke detectors? Is it relaying a signal or is it on its own? How's it work?
It's on its own. I don't want any nuisance alarms. That's one thing the fire department people don't know. We run fire alarm indications all the time. People burning fuel on the stove, they're home.
Yeah, we hate it too.
Yeah. Chirping smoke detectors. Right. I made Rescue Retriever specifically to go off on a true working fire. One that you cannot put out, one that we're coming, and one search and rescue is necessary.
Very good. So is this product on the market yet?
It is on the market on rescueretriever.com. We're also on Amazon, but I have to educate the public because they're not aware of the fact that so many pets are dying. And it's not because we're bad firefighters. It's because we don't find them fast enough because we don't know you have them, where they're at. And this is the answer. give residents the power to tell us where to go
Fighting
in their
chance
house.
at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know where my dog would hide. Probably back in his crate is what I would guess, but I don't know that for sure.
It does have a crate attachment right on the back. Standard crate goes right on it. Because guess what? Pets and crates definitely be rescued. That's why I made it like that. They can't get out.
If they can't get out, yeah. So how much does this cost?
Retails $39.99,
Oh.
so $40. It's got a 5-year lifespan, 5 years of insurance.
Wow.
Because if you're here, you're away from home, people think they can gather their pets. It doesn't happen. I've carried out far too many animals because we just couldn't find them fast.
And even if the fire department doesn't know about it, they're going to go to that strobing light, right? It's like, what the heck is that? That's got to be something.
We get questions all the time, even from firefighters. I'll never see that in black smoke. But one thing that Rescue Retriever does do, it takes heat. So it does heat up on our thermal
good
imager.
point.
So you can see a white glowing paw.
And this doesn't melt?
It will melt, but the key to firefighting is to get a rescue before it's 500 degrees on the floor. If it is,
I suppose if it's 500, we're done.
Yeah. The house is probably burning down by the time it's 500 degrees to the floor. But it's a 3-layered safety system. So you put decal at the front door because we mask up at the front door.
Oh.
I made it reflective so it bounces off our code 3 lights. You put your pet total right here. This also tells us you have a rescue retriever in the house. So we know you have this. So we're going to be looking for it.
Very good. Now you've also I see a collar with a gizmo on it. What is that?
That is why we're here. This could be our new launch coming soon. We have Rescue Retriever and its best friend fire tag. Now, people always say, what if it doesn't go to that room? Now we made it a collar attachment just in case it's not in the room that you want us at where your Rescue Retriever is.
Okay, so that tag just stays on their collar all the time, and then if anything ever happens?
It communicates directly with the Rescue Retriever. That way, when that goes off, that goes off.
Okay.
In case it's under a bed, it's somewhere in there so we can isolate the dog. Because sometimes these, especially small dogs, they go under beds. We can't get them with all our gear on.
Right.
Like it's
so that'd be an even better thing.
And they're scared of us.
Right. So this is a fairly large block. It's maybe an inch on a side and a half an inch thick.
Yeah, we made it.
Sticks on there.
We made it a little thicker because we want to give residents the option. If you have an AirTag system or anything like that, guess what?
Oh, you can add an AirTag inside.
Add an AirTag inside. Now you have your own GPS for your pet outside of the home.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Focus on the inside of the home for rescue, search and rescue of the pet, because that's what kills the animals. But now the resident has an option with all these other products.
Okay.
To put a GPS
and a lot of people probably put AirTags on their dogs, but now you got both in one.
My fiance puts it in my luggage. We put one in our kid's shoe.
We got them everywhere. Yeah.
So people use it wherever they want. Now they can use it for the dogs with fire tag.
Now, does I see you've got some harnesses here. Do the harnesses have anything to do with Rescue Retriever?
The harnesses is a brand new technology that we're launching, coming out this next January. It's new technology. It's magnet technology for ease of use. And for safety reasons, it's 360 swivel.
Okay, hang on. So we're looking at a harness, and I see something coming over that pops onto the harness, but I don't...
This is a magnet.
What does it do?
All it does is connect, just like that. So when you're walking your dog, ease of use goes right on for safety reasons.
Oh, that's the leash?
Yeah.
But if you can pull it...
You want to pull it off?
Oh, you got to squeeze it.
Yeah, you have
pull
to
it off. Squeeze it to pull it off, and then magnetic attachment.
Yeah, it's a secure mechanism, and it's got a 360 swivel, right? Wow. So when you're walking your dog, in the car, that's where I've got our harness for mine is, he's demonstrating there. Yeah. Oh, you've got him on the collars, this same swivel design. Yeah, so depending on how much your dog weighs, we have different sizes, and it holds up to 200, 400, 800 pounds.
One-handed feature
of torque.
Our eye candy here, who's been demonstrating your twin brother, Rusty.
I have lovely hands, and I have a lovely face like my brother. But yeah, this is our new feature. Actually, this is it's called Click It. Rescue Retriever in itself, we value safety. So every product we put with the Rescue Retriever brand, we value safety. So this is a one-handed feature. So it's one hand, boom, just like that. 900 pounds, you're not going to pull that off unless it comes right off just like that.
Well, that's slick. I don't have as much trouble with the collar, but man, with the harness getting him into the dog and whatever, he's too close, he's too far, whatever he's doing, he's making sure I can't get that collar thing on.
Just like a fire.
Yeah.
It's identical to it, but we have all our gear on and gloves, so we can ring them up fast. But we just need to get there We just need to get there to them faster.
Very good. So if people want to find Rescue Retriever, what's your website?
RescueRetriever.com.
Okay.
And if they want to, I do videos all the time on TikTok, Instagram, to make you aware how to use it, where to mount it. If firefighters know about it, and you're right, you said something. Any anomaly in a fire could be a little kid with a flashlight. That's what this is your dog with the flashlight saying, come rescue me. I'm over here.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you very much, both of you. This was really interesting. We'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, this is Eddie Tonkoy, the in-house nerd for everything behind the scenes on my wife Jern's character-driven queer love stories, including audiobook narration and production. This new series, Audiobook Audio version 3, exists because I made a mistake. Not a particularly dramatic one, and certainly not a catastrophic one, just the sort of mistake that only reveals itself once you've already committed, the kind that costs time, not money. In my case, it cost me about 40 hours of editing, and somewhere inside those 40 hours, I realized I'd been thinking about audiobook audio the wrong way round. I was well into editing an audiobook, tightening pacing, fixing small errors, cleaning things up, when I spotted a problem I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just one thing, it had a pattern. I was starting to see how small issues that had seemed manageable in isolation were compounding. Fixing one thing nudged another out of place. What was perhaps worse for me was that tools that I had felt helpful earlier were now getting in the way. The turning point was when I realized that the more time I spent with the audio, the less confident I felt about it. But what finally sealed the edit's fate was spotting an error that had been baked in by not noticing it. Eventually, I drummed up the courage to stop and question my life choices. I scrapped the edit and I started again from the original recordings. 40 hours of editing discarded. And that decision hurt, not because it was technically difficult, but because it forced me to sit with my own audio, closely, repeatedly for hours, without the comfort of believing I could fix it later. And that changed how I listened. The thing is, editing, proper critical editing that is merciless. When you're recording, a lot of things feel fine, feel good enough, and when you're processing, a lot of things feel clever. But when you're editing, especially for long stretches, anything fragile starts to fall apart. You start to hear patterns, you hear fatigue, and you hear where clarity only exists because you're concentrating. 40 hours of editing stripped away my ability to lie to myself. And what it revealed was this. My process wasn't broken, but it was backwards. I realized I'd been letting problems into the recording and trusting myself to fix them later. And even with good editing skills, that turns your time into damage control instead of enhancement. Looking back, I can see 3 distinct ways I've approached audiobook audio. I think of them now as V1, V2, and V3, not because they're neat upgrades, but because each one represents a different assumption about where the real work happens. V1 assumed tools would save me later. Record clean enough, process aggressively, and edit carefully, then fix what's left. And this does work, up to a point. But it makes you tolerant of problems you shouldn't accept in the first place. That's what I was doing when it fell apart, and I scrapped the edit. I picked up the original audio again and changed my approach. V2 was the reaction to that. I was using fewer tools and gentler processing. I was trying to show more restraint. And this was better, but it's still a reactive approach, and I was still letting problems into the recording and trusting myself to deal with them downstream. V3 is the uncomfortable one. V3 assumes that if something matters, it has to be decided early. Recording turned out not to be passive. It's where I decide what future me has to deal with. Once I saw that clearly, the rest of the workflow stopped being optional. The big lesson from those 40 hours wasn't about a specific tool or technique. It was this change of focus. Instead of recording audio I can improve later, record audio that does not need improving. Or more directly, stop asking, how can I fix this? And instead ask, why am I letting this happen? It seems obvious, but without real commitment, it is easy to neglect. Thankfully, with real commitment, it is achievable. This series is my attempt to explain how I try to record audio that does not need improving. I'm still learning, so this is not going to be by presenting a perfect workflow, but by showing the one that survived pressure, the one I now trust enough not to change mid-book. It's my audiobook audio version 3, and it is how I am now producing my highest quality audiobooks to date. First, I'll lay out the system as a whole and the decisions I refuse to wing. Then we'll zoom into capture, because that's where most of the leverage turned out to be. After that, we'll deal with the problems that only appear once you're deep into editing: noise, pacing, EQ, dynamics, loudness, and pickups. Each part exists to justify one commitment. By the end of this series, you won't just know what I do, you'll know why I do it early, why I keep it boring, and why I resist fixing things that should never have been broken. Next time, I'll start with the first commitment that made everything else possible: a minimal recording chain, and how removing options turned out to be the real constraint. If you want to know more, come and ask me over in the Slack community at podfeet.com/Slack, where I and all the other lovely Nosilla castaways enjoy friendly, positive online conversations. Feel free to message me, Eddie Tonkoy, if you have any thoughts, questions, or techniques you're using. It would be nice to share ideas. You can also find our work at jerntonkoy.com, that's JERNTONKOI.com, where you'll find Jern's character-driven queer love stories, the audiobooks I produce for them, and bonus material for our subscribers. I'll be back soon to talk through some more of my workflow, but for now, happy recording and happy reading.
When I announced in Slack and on social media that I'd been severely injured, the outpouring of love and support really overwhelmed me. Not only is the emotional support important, but a whole lot of folks have told me they'll be making audio recordings for the show to take the pressure off of me while I'm convalescing. That means more to me than any financial support you could give me. Don't get me wrong, money's great to offset the cost of the show, but this is a big deal. Instead of a link to send me money, in the show notes, the chapter links to an updated post on how to record a review, including what to do, what not to do, how to record, how to send it to me, and more. You can always get to this same document by going to podfeet.com and clicking on the picture of the little boy screaming into a microphone under the Support the Show section.
Bart here. Welcome to a solo Security Bits. Something I normally complain about, but you know something? The reason this is solo puts minor niggles like recording alone into somewhat more perspective. So, get well soon, Alison. Fingers crossed, touch wood. I talk to you in person, I say, in Skype, or, well, not Skype these days, but you know what I mean. Hopefully we talk again in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, recover well, do what the doctors say, and all appendages are crossed. Wishing you a speedy recovery. On to the world then of cybersecurity. A few follow-ups of things we have talked about before. If you cast your mind back to late 2025, there was a mysterious update to Notepad++ that you had to apply manually because something had gone wrong with the auto update. We didn't know at the time what had gone wrong, but I was pretty sure it was bad. Well, we actually found out about 2 weeks ago what had gone wrong, and it was bad. It was a proper supply chain attack. I didn't bother putting it in the show notes then because there was nothing you could really do. Well, in this case, I thought now's the time to talk about the story. Let's put a bow on it. Notepad++ have changed their mechanism for doing updates to make it more secure. They've added what they're calling a double lock mechanism, which should make sure that what the developers think they publish and what you download will be the same file without getting messed with in between. So that's a good thing. Only possibly a good thing. There has also been a small amount of movement on the slow-running train wreck that is the UK government's attempt to break into iCloud encryption of everyone around the world. US lawmakers are requesting a briefing on the UK's iCloud encryption backdoor plans. I have no idea how their request will go. I have no idea if they are granted a request. It will obviously be some sort of a confidential briefing, what they will say afterwards. But something is happening, so there it is. And then just a few timely reminders. Nothing shocking here. The specifics aren't really what's important. It's the bigger picture I'm reminding people of. So attackers are really getting quite stuck into targeting developers at, the last while. And that means going after developers in the kind of places developers do things like, say, extensions in VS Code. So, flaws in popular VS Code extension expose developers to attacks. I would say install exactly as many VS Code extensions that you actually need to actually do your work and no more. And do keep them updated and do keep an eye on, the techie news for any plugins, extensions you happen to be using. And so that's developers being targeted that way. Regular folk are being targeted a lot through browser plugins because browser plugins have a lot of power and run right inside the browser where you do a lot of very powerful things. Proton, the Swiss company behind the privacy-forward, whole suite of privacy-forward products, are warning of malicious Chrome extensions impersonating Proton VPN. They call themselves Proton VPN, but they are not, in fact, Proton VPN. And given that the Chrome store is kind of a store without a storekeeper, that's far too easy to do in Google Chrome. So if you are a Proton customer, you get your Proton software from the Proton website, not by just randomly searching in the Chrome store, would be my advice. We actually have 2 deep dives. They're deep is a strong word. Medium dives, I guess. Not shallow enough to hit my head off the ground, but not particularly deep either. So the first one it was talked about on the NosillaCastaway Slack, podfeet.com/Slack. It made a lot of news in general. A research paper out of ETH Zurich, that is a Swiss university, identified problems in the zero-knowledge promise, is what they call it, of 3 major password managers. I guess, okay, so the TLDR, because I always start with the TLDR, they did find actual problems, but they're not like, auga, your passwords are at risk problems. They're, if the stars line up the right way on a Tuesday and you rub your head and you stamp your feet in a certain way, then maybe the attackers could hypothetically get away with someone's password vault, maybe. They are weaknesses which require a lot of good luck for the baddies and bad luck for the universe. And what makes this a good news story, in my opinion, is that the password managers have responded with, thank you very much, we're going to make some tweaks to address those issues. So none of them are catastrophic, none of them are immediate threats, and they are being taken seriously by the vendors. This, to me, is what security research is supposed to do. You make products, you test them, you update them, you test them, and so on. So, like I say, to me, while it sounds scary, it's a good news story. So this zero-knowledge thing, the idea is a good password manager, if you sync your passwords to their cloud, they should not be able to get your passwords, because that way they can't lose them. If they can't access them, they can't lose them, and also they can't be forced to hand them over to someone, say from a government you disagree with, or more scary still, a government that disagrees with you, because you may have, say, opinions on freedom of speech in China, or goodness knows what. Anyway, you don't really want it to be possible for people to break into the password vaults you sync up to the cloud. And That is easy to do in a way that makes it impossible to recover your account if you lose your password. And human beings do that. And human beings get really cranky and waste a lot of time on support calls if they get locked out of a product they may well be paying for. The fact that they're the ones who forgot their password isn't going to make them any less cranky. You have to have a password recovery process. And that means that there is an intentional crack in the very easy to do perfect security you would get if you just did client-side encryption and no way out of it. That would be so easy to do securely, but not a good product. And so these problems all come about from trying to square that circle, trying to make it recoverable, but not in such a way that it can be abused. And that's difficult. And so the question the ETH Zurich researchers asked was, let us imagine, hypothetically, that these 3 password managers were completely, totally, and utterly hacked. Totally, completely. Their infrastructure was utterly compromised. That would be a red letter day. It did happen once with LastPass, rather dramatically, and LastPass's ducks were far from in a row back then, causing billions of dollars of cryptocurrency to be stolen out of supposedly secret vaults. So this hypothetical problem has happened once. And LastPass were extra super sloppy. So everyone else was very quick to say, yeah, we wouldn't do it that way. And they wouldn't. So anyway, the 3 password managers that the ETH Zurich researchers looked at were Bitwarden, LastPass, and Dashlane. And the Swiss cheese model, I think, is the best example. They basically found that if you line up all the slices of Swiss cheese certain ways, it is possible to get the holes to line up. But you gotta be very, very lucky as an attacker or unlucky as the company running the service. So, room for improvement, some holes in the Swiss cheese that can be filled in, but nothing catastrophic. So, on the whole, I put this one down as a yay. I certainly put a fire extinguisher icon on it. Deep dive number 2 then is a new vulnerability with a cool name. It's called AirSnitch, and it is a problem on Wi-Fi, and it affects the most expensive Wi-Fi the most, which is unusual. The TLDR is that even on the fancy enterprise level capital portal networks that I used to tell you were safe to do without a VPN, I probably want to turn the VPN back on. That's the TLDR. So, as a little reminder, the last time we talked about Wi-Fi in this as a deep dive was, it's at least 6 months ago, if not slightly longer. And the question was, do we still need a VPN in 2025? And I sort of said, yeah, I actually don't bother anymore. Unless no, I don't, because I don't go to the kind of places where I think you might still want to. And now I'm having second thoughts about that. So the reason I wasn't as worried about VPNs is twofold. First off, I'm very careful that everything I do is actually encrypted independently. So that means the VPN is a suspenders to my fairly good belt. And I'm fairly confident that my belt is secure. Oh, this metaphor is going all over the place, but you know what I mean. And so I was like, do I really need a VPN on top of this? And then there's the fact that I understand this thing called client isolation on enterprise-grade Wi-Fi. And this is a magical feature that makes things so much more secure, because what it does is it stops clients on the same Wi-Fi network talking to each other. They can only talk out to the internet. So the clients, as in the fellow people sharing the network, are isolated from each other and can't talk to each other. So that means you can't snoop on each other's traffic, and that means you can't attack each other's devices, whether or not they have a firewall, whether or not they're unpatched. Doesn't matter. You actually can't get the packets to and from them. And that is the promise of client isolation, and when it works well, it's a very powerful feature. It provides a lot of protection. The problem is, it's not part of the Wi-Fi standard. It is a bonus extra that advanced router products offer to outcompete less advanced Wi-Fi products. The vendors figured out that you could do this by doing some clever things inside the router, and each of the vendors figured out their own unique and special way of doing it, and the fact that they're all different has the slight advantage that it's hard to find a flaw in all of them in one fell swoop. The disadvantage is, because there is no open standard that has been rigorously scrutinized by professional security researchers, because it's a standard and is fully published and fully open, what you have instead is some vague white papers, maybe, in proprietary software. And it's all different. So the only thing you can really do is attack it and see how you go. And so this is where the very talented computer scientists in KU Leuven, KU in English, I guess, Koninklijke Universiteit Leuven in Belgium, got to work. And if you think, KU Leuven, that sounds familiar. That's because they regularly get mentioned here in this segment on the show. They are definitely the finest cybersecurity researchers in Belgium, and I would say they are among the finest in Europe, if not the world. They do really world-class research, and this is another example. So they tested whether or not they could break this client isolation feature on advanced Wi-Fi. And a reason, apart from when you're traveling, so if you're in a major hotel chain, you're almost certainly on enterprise-grade Wi-Fi. If you're a corporation, you're on the guest network in a university, it's almost all enterprise-grade Wi-Fi. Places it may or may not be is a coffee shop. If it's a big chain, probably enterprise-grade. If it's a mom-and-pop store where there's a pre-shared key, a Wi-Fi password, post-it noted onto the till or something, it is not enterprise-grade Wi-Fi. Anyway, even if you're not on enterprise-grade Wi-Fi, these features have begun to percolate down into the consumer products in a feature called guest network. So if your Wi-Fi router offers a guest network, that feature is under the hood a simplified, cut-down version of client isolation, and the vendors generally use the same basic functions and stuff to achieve it. It's a little bit different. It's kind of a simplified version, but it's very closely related under the hood. Which unfortunately means that when the researchers in KU Leuven found problems with client isolation, they also found problems in the guest mode on home Wi-Fi routers. Because they're all different, they didn't find one attack that just kills them all. So that's kind of a good news story. There is no one gaping hole they all share. But that's a silver lining around a much bigger problem that with a small suite of attacks, they only developed, I think it was a handful, it was less than 10 distinct attacks. Every single implementation is vulnerable to at least some of these attacks, and in all cases, enough of them to chain them together to achieve useful compromises. The compromises were more useful, by which I mean terrifying. Others less useful, but nonetheless, all of them were vulnerable to enough of this tool set to do real damage. And because there's no standard, this is not going to be an easy fix. So each of these vendors now have to go and figure out how to reinvent their own wheel to deal with these issues. And maybe the outcome will be an actual standard. That will be a great outcome of this. Whatever the outcome is going to be, it's going to take time. Not weeks, not months, years. So what were they able to do? Well, it varied from implementation to implementation, and in some cases the variance was down to how well you configured the product. So it's not just the case that every product is a little bit different, it's also the case that different configurations of the same product can be quite different. But the impact was on a spectrum where sort of the least bad, which is kind of the whole point of client isolation, that you can't have an adversary in the middle. On a normal Wi-Fi network with a pre-shared key, everyone is an adversary in the middle. Everyone can intercept everyone's traffic. And in theory, that shouldn't be possible with client isolation. So making that possible is basically defeating client isolation. And in all cases, they were able to defeat client isolation. Adversary in the middle is the least bad outcome. Full plain text Wi-Fi passwords being the most bad outcome. Thankfully, that generally speaking was only a really big problem on enterprise-grade networks with single sign-on. So this is where you don't sign on to the Wi-Fi with a pre-shared key, a one Wi-Fi password everyone uses, but you sign on with your own username and password, usually your Active Directory credentials, which get you into your email and everything else in work. And that is done through a protocol called Radius. And if you configure Radius, you have like master keys that encrypt everything Radius does. And if you don't set those up well, then the Caillou 11 researchers discovered that you can break the Radius keys to the point that you get every user's plain text username and password, which effectively means if you're an attacker who's wandered into the lobby and joined the guest Wi-Fi network at a corporation, you now start to see corporate usernames and passwords for the corporate Active Directory. That's bad. That's very bad. So the biggest lesson here is everyone who runs an enterprise network with Radius, make sure you actually turn Radius on properly. Make sure you configure your Radius with care. Everyone else, we kind of have to assume that client isolation doesn't work. Which means that if you're very confident that absolutely everything you do is encrypted with HTTPS or TLS of some sort, if all the protocols have an S, basically, then being an adversary in the middle doesn't give the attacker any advantage because the whole point of HTTPS is that it's immune to adversary in the middle. The whole point of SSH is that it's immune to adversary in the middle. The whole point of the secure version of SMTP and IMAP and all of these protocols is that they're immune to adversary in the middle AITM. Therefore, the fact that client isolation doesn't work is not a problem if you do everything securely. But if you slip up once, then an adversary in the middle can really go to town on you. Or if you click by one certificate warning, because if there's an adversary in the middle, what you will see is a certificate warning. If you once don't notice the URL has changed and you type paypal.com but you ended up on paypool.com, then you're in trouble because you could have a padlock, but you've ended up in the wrong place and you weren't observant enough to notice. So that's kind of why, for a lot of people, a VPN is a fantastic idea because it's the belt and suspenders. Yes, most of the internet is encrypted these days, so yes, most people are probably fine. Probably. Unless they're human, by which I mean careless. And that's where having a VPN is really quite a big help. Now, you're working with a net instead of without a net. And so I think the mental arithmetic of is it worth it to get a trustworthy VPN, which means you pay for it, or not, that's now, I think the math has changed and I think we should recalculate our own decisions depending on how much we travel, how much we do these kind of things, and make up your own mind. I travel extremely little. I am very careful. I am a paid iCloud user, so I have some extra VPN adjacent protections through iCloud Plus using a secure relay. So I'm still coming to the same conclusion. I've redone my arithmetic and I've arrived at the same place. I'm not getting a VPN, but if someone asks my advice, I am more likely to recommend VPNs to more people than I would have been a week ago. And so like I say, reevaluate your own decisions and just make an informed decision and all is well. Right, on to action alerts. Just two. Google have patched the first 0 day of 2026 in their Chrome browser, so that means turn it off and turn it on again. That's the patch for a browser. Turn it off and turn it on again. And if you have a Zycel router or Wi-Fi extender, you need to click the link in the show notes and make sure that the model you have and the models listed in the Bleeping Computer article don't line up because Zycel warn of critical remote code execution flaw affecting over a dozen routers. Worthy warnings then. These are quite niche this time. So the first slightly niche one is that if you have a website, whether that be a WordPress site with a Google Maps plugin or something, or whether that be one you coded yourself, or whether that be a Squarespace one with a Google Maps, if you have a Google Maps on your website, you probably have an API key. And if your website is driven primarily by JavaScript, that API key for Google Maps, which is free, is in your JavaScript code, and it has never been a valuable secret before. All it did was allow you to use Google Maps on specific domains. So it was kind of thing that, yeah, you've just got a credential sitting in plain text in the HTML of your website that anyone can do a view source on, but it's a credential that's no good to anyone else, so it's not a problem. Unfortunately, in their rush to AI, Google didn't really think about that when rolling out the Gemini API, and those API keys will now work with Gemini. So the API key that you put on your website, copying and pasting in the sample code from Google themselves, now allows malicious people to talk to Gemini as you, and to ask Gemini questions about your data that Gemini will answer using your data because it's your API key. Oops. So if you have a website with a Google Maps API key, you need to change all your credentials, revoke the key, and delete Google Maps from your website, because Google haven't fixed this yet. OpenStreetMap is amazing, by the way. Free, open source, sort of like the Wikipedia of mapping. Consider it. And then a second one, a rather large company that do a lot of auto sales in the North Americas, is called Car Gurus. They had a major data breach affecting 12.4 million accounts, including very sensitive information, including payment details, partial payment details, but nonetheless, very sensitive data here. And the breach has been verified by Have I Been Boned. It's real. They really have lost this data. The company are just not playing ball. They're denying it. They're not cooperating. They're actually technically denying it. They're just not telling anyone. So yeah, which means they're not notifying people. Which means that if you've used Car Gurus, you may not be in any way aware that this sensitive data of yours, including partial payments, card details, has been leaked. But it has. So link in show notes for more detail. Notable news then. It is possible that we have passed peak ransomware. It's one of the things that's quite easy to report on because ransomware is paid with cryptocurrency, which means it's all pseudonymous. So you don't really know who was paid all the money for the ransoms, but you can see how much is in the wallets used for ransomware. And ransomware payments hit a record low for the last, I think it was quarter they were reporting on. And yet the rate of ransomware is actually going up. That means that fewer and fewer people are choosing to pay. And that means the economic force is now against this being a good attack, against this being value for money for the baddies, because it's all about the money. Follow the money. It's always about the money. So what I would expect to see is that because there is less return, less money is going to put into making these attacks. So either the volume of attack will go down, which I don't think is going to happen because if anything, AI is going to make it easier to do more. So the other thing that can happen is the complexity of the attacks can go down. So you don't spend as much, you try more sites, but you don't try as hard. Which means that the value you get from making a small investment in doing cybersecurity correctly for your organization is likely to start paying off more because only the worst of the worst are going to get ransomware as the economics shift. And a big reason for this is that in the many, many parts of the world, there are either guidelines saying you shouldn't pay or laws outlawing paying, or in the case of publicly funded bodies, rules saying you will lose your public funding if you pay ransom. So in Ireland, if you're in the public sector, you do not pay ransom. It is just, sorry, you're a government body, taxpayer money does not go to ransoms. Which makes it really simple. You've been ransomware, everything's in a mess. Will you pay the ransom? No. Like the cybersecurity incident response team who come in to help you deal with the crisis will ask you a difficult question. What about maybe paying the ransom? The answer is just no. It's a really easy question, actually. No, we're not allowed. And so this to me is a fantastic example of why we need to have more of these mandates, more of these laws. Kill the revenue and the attacks will drop right off. Another piece of what I would think is quite good news is that the first version of the Aliro Smart Lock standard has been released. Aliro 1.0 is out. This is sort of like Matter level of interoperability and standardization and default security for everyone, but specialized in on smart locks, because there's more to it than just the connectivity and stuff offered by the previous standards. So it's like a layer on top of all of the other stuff we already have. So this is just going to make smart locks more secure, more interoperable with each other, work more reliably. It's just going to make smart locks better. And given how important it is that smart locks be actually smart and actually locks, I am very pleased by this. I have basically said I'm not getting a smart lock until Aliro is out. Aliro is now out, so I'm now in the market for a smart lock. And then we have some silly news from the island nearest to me. The United Kingdom plans age checks for VPN use, because that way it'll stop the kids bypassing the social media ban. Where does this madness end? This is insane. It's also not going to work, because there are plenty of dodgy VPNs that are insecure as all heck and will riddle you with malware, but they will get you to an IP address outside the United Kingdom. So what you're doing is pushing malware on kids. You're trying to substitute tech for parenting. You can't substitute tech for parenting. Parenting is the only way to parent. This, at the moment, is a proposal. The fact that it came out of the Prime Minister's mouth is terrifying, but it is just a proposal. It still has to go through Parliament and all kinds of stuff. It's not even a bill yet. This is a long way away, but it's a terrible aim, in my humble opinion. Yeah, I'm really being, unopinionated and just giving you the facts straight, haven't I, today? Yeah, whatever. I don't have the energy to try to be balanced about something this silly. So, if you disagree with me, podfeed.com/Slack, tell me I'm an idiot. Well, no. Explain your disagreement with reasoned argument and we'll have a discussion. And if you want to tell me I'm an idiot, fine, I just won't care. Okay, where was I? Related news, iOS 26.4 beta contains a test version of an OS-level age verification API for apps in certain countries, like the UK, who already have social media bans. The UK is a pornography ban at the moment. To deploy to leverage in their apps that come under these laws. And this API is going to be available in the various jurisdictions where these things are relevant: Australia, certain states in the United States, and the United Kingdom. And so that is now in beta in the version of iOS that is coming next. So that is interesting and very much related to that silly UK VPN story. Another very common theme in this segment of the show is, hey, AI has two sides. Anyone who thinks AI is the end of the universe is only seeing part of the story, and anyone who thinks AI is amazing is going to be the answer to life, the universe, and everything is also missing half the story. It's yes and. So on the one hand, we have news that hackers used AI to breach 600 FortiGate appliances across 55 countries. FortiGate sell stupendously expensive, high-end, enterprise-grade firewalls, etc., security devices that sit at the edge of large corporate networks, valuable corporate networks, protecting the crown jewels. 600 of them bypassed because, I'm going to quote here from Cyber Insider, a financially motivated, it's all about the money, a financially motivated Russian-speaking threat attacker used commercial generative AI services to compromise more than 600 FortiGate devices across 55 countries. Rather than exploiting zero-day flaws, the campaign relied on exposed management interfaces and weak credentials, with AI acting as a force multiplier that enabled large-scale parallel intrusions. AI is good at following instructions. Well, AI is grand at following instructions, but it does it very quickly. So it is a force multiplier. That's obviously not the good side of AI. On the other hand, large language models are amazing at analyzing things, and it turns out that code is a language. And these large language models that are amazing at language are amazing at code. So Anthropic launches Cloud Code Security for AI-powered vulnerability scanning. This is fantastic. So this is going to find and nip many more problems in the bud. On the other hand, if you don't set things up well, it's easier than ever for someone to abuse your flawed setups. Remember, these AIs were not using 0 days or anything fancy pants. They were just using badly set up FortiGate devices. So set yourself up properly. Something that's caused quite a bit of consternation online is the fact that for the first time in, I think, about a decade, 1Password have increased their prices or announced that they will be increasing their prices for your next renewal after some date in March. And I don't particularly think the price increase is unexpected or unfair. It literally hasn't increased in so long. I can't remember the last time it increased. And Adam Engst actually did the math and threw it into an inflation calculator. And for Teams accounts, the price has gone, or for family accounts, the price has actually gone down in real terms. As in, compared to what it cost on the first day that the current price came into being. So in effect, we've been getting slow price cuts for years and years and years as the price has stayed solid while inflation keeps inflating, and now 1Password are playing catch up. And in the case of the single accounts, it pretty much equals inflation. And in the case of the family accounts, the increase is less than inflation. So actually, you're technically speaking slightly ahead, but it's not going to feel like that because the number's getting bigger. And so you could get all cranky about it. I'm not going to bother because I don't think it's unfair. I think it's kind of important that software that needs to be constantly maintained has a constant input, a revenue stream. And if you want to pay good developers, you need to have decent income. So, I think it's all about the economics, all about follow the money. And in this case, well, yeah, if you want good software, you got to pay for it. And anyway, that's neither here nor there. What I think is a useful response to this obvious reality is maybe it's time to ask yourself the question again. Do I still need 1Password in 2026? Because if you bought into it 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, the landscape was very, very, very different. Apple didn't really have any sort of competing product. Microsoft didn't have anything built into their operating systems. But at this stage, between browsers with good password management that synchronizes, like, say, for example, Chrome, and platforms like Apple's that have nice password syncing, even password sharing features now. And remember that Apple have a plugin for Chrome, which means that your iCloud keychain is now available pretty much anywhere Chrome is available, which means you've quite a lot more reach than you would have had even just 2 or 3 years ago, before the Passwords app was a standalone app, and before that Chrome extension was released, I think about 1.5 years ago. So the landscape has changed a lot. So maybe this is an opportunity just to take the time to ask the question, do I need a commercial password manager anymore? Maybe I can make do with the built-in stuff. Just a question worth asking, I think. Another theme I noticed when putting together these show notes is there's a lot of regulators busy regulating, and I wasn't sure how much that would stall given that, political climates come and go. Like, there are decades where you had these, large, obviously antitrust companies that no one was bothering to regulate. And then you had decades where antitrust was a big, big thing. And then the pendulum would swing the other way. And I sort of felt that regardless of the minutiae. The pendulum swing at the moment, I thought, was heading against regulation. But it would appear that if you grossly abuse your customers, you will still face consequences, and that can only be a good thing. So these are just stories from the last 2 weeks in the order that they hit my newsreader. Texas sues TP-Link over Chinese hacking risks and user deception. The UK fines Reddit $19.5 million over child data privacy failures. New York State sues Valve for loot boxes, violating state gambling laws because, hey, loot boxes are basically lotteries for your kids. You'd never allow your kids to play lottery. And yet these loot boxes are no different to lotteries. Like, when you think about it, they're just lotteries in the skies making vast wads of cash. So I kind of like that one. And then a nice little circle back. A few weeks ago, we talked about Texas suing Samsung and some other smart TV makers for the way they basically spy on you to help pay for your television without asking your informed consent. And that's really quite sneaky and unpleasant. And Texas sued Samsung for it, and I was delighted. That has had an effect. Samsung are updating their smart TV practices because they've settled with Texas to get there. Basically, we're going to stop taking your stuff without your consent. So, yay, progress. I've also had some nice updates to software products. DuckDuckGo is adding private AI photo editing to their Duck.ai platform. Firefox 148 is introducing the promised AI kill switch, basically one single big toggle, and if you toggle it one way, all the AI features are gone out of Firefox, and if you toggle it the other way, you can then turn on each individual AI feature as and when you wish. But what people wanted was the off switch. There is now an off switch, as promised, so yay. And Instagram are showing that even Meta can do the right thing sometimes. Instagram to notify parents if teens search suicide or self-harm terms. Now, this won't happen if a kid mentions those words once. This will happen once there is a trend developing where the algorithm will go, okay, that's not healthy, and get help. So I think this is very clever. It's exactly the kind of thing you should be doing as a large corporation who has kids under their care. So I think, great, thank you, Meta, and now do that in more products, please. Finally, an interesting one. It's kind of a joke in the cybersecurity community that a lot of quackery gets sold with the tagline military-grade encryption or military-grade security. That military-grade is not something that is measurable, right? But in this case, I'm actually going to say that the iPhone can be legitimately argued to be actually military-grade. Why do I say this? Because, as Cyber Insider summarize it, Apple iPhone becomes first consumer product certified for handling classified NATO data. So, a consumer phone, like the one in my pocket, is good enough to hold the secretest of secrets for NATO. Yay! This is not something that would have been possible 2 decades ago with a consumer pocket device. So, Apple have been working really hard on their security, and that the iPhone is the first consumer product to be certified for NATO classified data does not surprise me if anyone's going to be first, but it's still quite the vote of confidence in Apple's work. So yay. I have one top tip, one of those links that may be useful to send to friends or family who are less technically savvy, but under your care. It is a Mac Observer article that I thought was very informative. Apple Users Guide to Safe Browsing on Mac and iPhone. None of it is earth-shattering. None of it is rocket science. I imagine most of it, if not all of it, is second nature to people listening to the Nosilicast, or certainly listening to this security bit segment tacked onto the end of the Nosilicast. But nice little summary for friends and family. Share it around as and when useful would be my suggestion. I also want to link to an excellent explainer. Basically, it's kind of an open question, or you can have in a reasoned discussion as to whether or not Android or iOS are more secure in 2026, because there are a lot of changes going on. Google are making some very clever moves to secure Android better. They're making more use of AI for security than Apple are at the moment. Apple, however, are the first consumer phone certified for NATO secrets, so they're obviously no slouches. So the question that the Mac Observer asks is iPhone still safer, or has Google closed the gap? The question, I guess, isn't really has Google surpassed Apple, because the answer is no. But maybe they've caught up with Apple. Well, the reason I'm not giving you a TLDR on this is because actually it's complicated, because they do things very differently. So there actually are substantial differences, but on the whole, both are very good. They're just very different. So it's actually a fascinating article, which is why it's an excellent explainers. So link in show notes for the Mac Observer piece, Android versus iOS security. And then I have an interesting insight, which I could have put as a palate cleanser, but it's more cerebral. It really is an interesting insight. So there is a lot of chatter on a lot of podcasts in 2026 about AI, and a lot of it is time wasting. It's not really worth the electrons it took to beam it across the internet. But very interesting conversation on Neil deGrasse Tyson's Star Talk Radio podcast, The Origins of Artificial Intelligence with Geoffrey Hinton. If that name is ringing a little vague bell somewhere, it might be because he won the Nobel Prize for his work on the very foundations upon which all modern AI is built, and he was laying those foundations pretty much before I was born. We are talking decades of work here on the foundations of AI. As I have discovered with every Nobel Prize winner I've ever had the privilege of hearing speak, they know their stuff so well they can explain it so simply. And as I discover regularly when trying to write show notes, to make something sound simple and intelligible, you need to really bloody understand it. It's really hard work, and AI is not trivial stuff, but Geoffrey Hinton understands it so well that he makes it sound easier than anyone else I've ever heard explain it. I know academically what backpropagation does, and there was a time when I was studying for my computer science degree that I could have written out the formulas for it and I told you how to do it, but I didn't really understand it. Actually, I have a better understanding of it today than I did the day I passed my exams. Fascinating conversation, link in show notes. Great podcast episode to listen to. He also has a really charming English accent. He just sounds like a really nice man. Good sense of humor too. It's a joyful interview. And then some actual palate cleansers. I enjoy Sherlock Holmes. I think they're fun books / movies / TV shows / adaptations of all kinds. But Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was not a skeptic. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was fooled by the fake fairy photos, the Cuddington fairies, and the man believed in all sorts of wacky stuff. So, to hold Sherlock Holmes up as an example of logic is silly. And to suggest that his catchphrase is clever is equally silly. One of my absolute pet peeves is people saying that the reductive reasoning is this genius thing. It's not. It's bloody terrible. And XKCD have a cartoon to prove it to you. I will leave you to enjoy the cartoon yourself, but basically, if what it means when you say, if I've eliminated everything else, what remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. No, that's not how the universe works. What it means is, the less imaginative you are, the more certain you are that you're being quote-unquote logical while coming up with cuckoo as Cocoa Pops nonsense. If I may get on my soapbox next to my pet peeve, that's one of the biggest fuels of the toxic idiocy that is giving us our conspiracy theory culture here in 2026. If you've eliminated everything you think is possible, the weirdest thing you can think of must be true. No! No. Sherlock Holmes' logic is terrible. Fantastic character, really fun books, really fun movies, terrible logic. Very funny XKCD to drive the point home. And then, more cerebral in the actually intelligent way, my favourite grammar podcaster, I will admit I'm choosing from a short list here, is Mignon Fogarty. Grammar Girl is her podcast. I really enjoy it. It's made me less bad at writing. I'm still terrible at this whole grammar thing, but I'm better now than I ever was in school. And it's thanks to Mignon's amazing work. Well, she has a really fun interview conversation with my favourite typography geek, Glenn Fleischman. His book on printing is amazing. I have the copy right next to my bed at the moment because I listened to the audiobook, which Glenn read, and it was lovely, but I actually have the printed book because it's really nice. And so I'm rereading it in print because it's a book about print. Anyway, Glenn is on Mignon not to talk about print, but to answer what you might think is a simple question. Why do we do shouty in all caps on the internet? And is that an internet thing or is that older? It's a lot older than you think. Hinting, that's minor spoiler, a lot older than you think. Fabulous conversation. Very interesting, very fun, and maybe you'll understand why I think Glenn Fleischman is so great, and maybe you'll buy his book. Anyway, right. There are many downsides to me doing a solo security bits. Alison isn't here to keep me off my soapbox, and I apologize if I strayed a little bit in this one. I may have been a bit more opinionated than I usually would be. Also, Alison isn't here to tell me I'm rambling and I should stop. And I get the distinct impression I've been going for a very long time and I must be rambling, so I should probably stop. So, until next time. I was going to say happy computing, but that's wrong. I can't even do my own outro without Alison. Until next time, remember to stay patched so you stay secure.
Well, that's going to wind us up for this week, and I still can't believe I managed to pull this off, literally sitting in a hospital bed with beeping IVs going, all kinds of things. But we made it through. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeed.com anytime you like? If you have a question or a suggestion or one of those reviews, just send it on over. Remember, everything good starts with podfeed.com. You can follow me on Mastodon at podfeed.com/Mastodon. If you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube, you can go to podfeed.com/YouTube. If you want to join the conversation, you can join our Slack community at podfeed.com/Slack, where you can talk to me and all of the very, very lovely NoSilla castaways. The outpouring of love, again, I'm verklempt. It was really, really nice. You can support the show at podfeed.com/Patreon with a one-time donation at podfeed.com/donate or through podfeed.com/PayPal. Or you can do a review. Look for it on the homepage. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, well, let's just say we'll stay tuned on when that's going to happen next. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed.